writing for The Simpsons, for Mission Hill, and for Portland, among other things. Please welcome Mr. Bill Oakley! You've done an incredible number of things. You've done a million different things, but we would be remiss if we didn't start with The Simpsons and end with The Simpsons and do The Simpsons in the middle, right? That's what we should talk about.
Yes.
You not only, well, let's start here. This is something on the Mercury wanted me to ask. First of all, so you were the showrunner for 7 and 8.
That's right.
So I know what that means, obviously, but for people who don't know what that means, tell us what you were doing as the showrunner of The Simpsons.
The showrunner is like the director of a movie, sort of like a movie that's written and directed and produced by one person. That's kind of what the showrunner of a TV show is, where, especially in an animated show, you make every decision about everything. That's really what it is. You decide what episodes are going to be done.
That's not braggy at all.
Who's going to be okay? Who's going to be writing them? You direct the actors, you direct the sound editors, you direct the animators, and it's a very stressful job, which is why, at least at that point, people were only doing it for 2 years at a time.
Yeah. Well, but you came up through the writing program, so by that, when you'd written for a few years on the season, you're like, well, this guy seems like he's ready to direct and produce.
It was sort of like a seniority thing, and fortunately the person right in front of us was Conan O'Brien, so he got hired off to do a talk show, and then we were like sitting pretty for the promotion to run
right.
the show. Yeah.
Well, and so the seasons that you were doing everything for are like, this is like the golden age. This is the time that people who are really into Simpsons discuss as this is the best part of the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I know you've got on your resume you have The Simpsons, but you also have that, like, not only The Simpsons, but you beat other The Simpsons when you're writing. Is that something that when you sit down to meet with somebody to pitch a new show, do you mention that? Do you get to bring that up? Do you mention that to your friends every time you're out hanging out?
I have to say it's tragic that the average person in Hollywood is not nearly as familiar with The Simpsons as you are. They have no idea what seasons were the good ones or whatever, and which ones were regarded by fans and so on. So they are aware that it made a lot of money though. So that's right. You can sometimes get some mileage out of that.
Right, so you wrote for them for a bunch of years. You did the showrunner. You've done all of the things there, and then you decided to go be involved in every other show over the next 15 years. You've done a million things. What are you working on right now? What's the thing that's what's you're filling your days with?
Well, I actually most of the time I write pilots, and as you probably know about movies, there's like 1,000 screenplays written that go into a file cabinet that are never seen.
Right.
I'm the TV equivalent of that. I write.
You're filling up file cabinets for somebody.
It's hard drives now.
You're right.
But I write pilots, and I have several pilots that are going right now. The actual thing that of mine that's going to be on the air next is there's a show called Trip Tank on Comedy Central that just started a few weeks ago. That is a kind of like Adult Swim boiled down into 1/2 hour. It's all sorts of crazy animation, and they solicited a lot of different people, like Bob Odenkirk and Larry David, people like that, to do like little shorts. And I have one that I'm very proud of that starts in about 2 weeks.
And what's it about?
It is about a team of schoolgirl assassins from Tokyo who are sent to Texas by the Yakuza to take over the drug trade there. And it's called Flower Team Kill Teen Go, and it's sort of a parody of Japanese anime, and I'm very proud of the way it came out. And that'll be on in episodes 6, 7, and 8 of Trip Tank.
So if you're mostly producing pilots, that seems emotionally much more trying than writing a continued saga. That you have to start and get really invested in characters and then set it down and then get invested in
That's right, yes. It's terrible. I mean, well, okay. Speaking of this, I knew you were going to ask a question like this, so I prepared a quote. And Dorothy Parker once said, I hate writing, but I love having written.
Sure,
that describes me. I
Yeah.
really hate writing. I hate it, but I have to do it all the time.
For a living and be great at it.
Yes. Well, I mean, debatably, but I have to do. I have to keep writing stuff, and I don't know. Writing is hard, man. Like people who are like, I can just sit down and type, I don't know what's wrong with them. Like, how can you possibly do that? I mean, every I think it's much worse in the age of perpetual distraction.
Yeah.
And I literally have to turn off the phone, turn off the cell phone, turn off the house phone, and use one of those programs that keeps the internet locked out.
Right, that doesn't let you go on
computer.
Twitter.
Yeah, it doesn't let you do anything. And
Right.
it's also irreversible. You can't restart the computer or whatever. And so I have to do that. And then I'm like, oh God, I'm going to go do the laundry or whatever. And
Right.
it's like that. So I eventually, the panic sets in and I start writing. But it is, it's hard. And like, I don't like making up stuff from scratch. Like, you're exactly right. Working on The Simpsons, there was a whole universe already created, and we knew the grammar of the characters, and you knew, Milhouse would say stuff like this and whatever.
Right.
That's much easier than writing a pilot where you have to create the whole universe from scratch every single time.
And you also have to, like, when you start the next pilot, you have to lose all of that stuff that you got really invested in for those previous people. You have to, like, you liked these characters, and then
Yes,
you have to
I
write
had
more
a
with them.
pilot that I worked for a year. This is what happens constantly in TV development and movies and so forth. I had a pilot that I worked on for a year and a half for Comedy Central with some people that might even be in this room. That was kind of like the Portland, more like a Workaholics kind of show, but for Portland with a Portland geek scene. That I wanted maybe even Ian Carmel to appear in. And so
Okay,
forth.
sure,
And, you
yeah.
get a call and suddenly it's dead. Bam, and then you're just like, oh, I didn't really expect that, but like, you got to move on to the next thing, and that's the way it works.
Was that a siren or like the loudest sigh
Yeah.
ever? What just happened? Either way, it's appropriate. So what is the thing? If the writing stresses you out so much, and this emotional part,
I love
of
it when
this-
it's finished, though.
You
That's
like-
I love it when it's done, and I'm like, oh my God, and I read it over and over, and I'm like, oh, look at that, man, that's really funny. Oh, what was I thinking, man? I'm so talented, and then I love that part. But like the part of like, the part of
And the
starting-
internet's back. It's a great
I
time.
know, man, that's joy every day when that happens. But so that's what was the question again?
I didn't get to it yet. You cut me off. That's great. I was going to ask, like, so what's the dream then? Like, if there was a dream job for you, would it be not writing pilots? Obviously, getting one picked up and spending all your time in that. Would
Yes,
be
and
part
that's
of it,
what I
but-
want to do. That's the thing is, and I think this goes back to what the question you may have in mind was working at The Simpsons spoils you for, since you gave me a preview of the question,
I did.
I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah.
Spoils you for other things because it's a unique environment where there's absolutely no interference from anyone else. Back when the days when the show was first invented, James L. Brooks was able to negotiate this astounding deal with Fox that like they couldn't have any input. They weren't allowed to. They didn't get the scripts. They couldn't come to the table readings. We'd deliver a tape and they would broadcast it. And like that's amazing. You never get that kind of deal.
You ruined it for every other TV show.
Yeah.
No one's going to get away with that
so
ever again.
after working there and having that, and being in charge of, also when we were running the show, Jim Brooks was directing his movies and he wasn't there, and Matt was not really there. So it was like we were making all the decisions. And after that, it's hard to go back to the other way of doing things.
Where you're like asking Fox's permission to make a joke.
Absolutely, yes. Or even lesser networks. Less money to spend.
When Fox says no, you understand, but when the CW is doesn't like a joke.
Yes. So they.
More interesting sides from the
The
audience.
president of CW is here.
He did
Sorry,
say.
buddy.
The goal, and ultimately the goal, would be to have a show like that I could do the way I wanted.
Right.
From Portland, ideally, something of that nature.
Well, so tell me of the pilots that have been pushed into the cabinet and closed. What's your favorite thing that you don't get to make into TV now? The Portland one said, like, what's something else in your file? Can you tell us? Is that allowed?
I had a show. My partner and I had a show that was on the schedule on NBC between 30 Rock and The Office when the president of NBC got fired that day, and it was one of his favorite projects, and it was tragic. But
What was the show like? What was it?
it was called Business Class, and it was a single camera comedy that was kind of like a 30 Rock type show about two guys who effectively worked for Coke, traveling around the country to different places, trying to beat the lady who worked for Pepsi. To these sales things, and it was all just about like the hardship of sales and stuff, and it was really funny. But
Live
it had,
action
like,
or animated?
Live action.
Live action.
And it had a the thing is that killed it is it had a narrator, and like at that point, like the whole idea of a narrator on TV shows was so hated by network executives
Right.
that they made us strip it out, and then the guy who replaced Kevin Riley made us strip it out and re-edit it, and then killed it in the whole 2-week process. It was a nightmare. But that kind of thing. Also, ultimately, it would have been killed by the writer's strike anyway. So that's how you're zen about that kind of thing.
So I want to ask one other thing. I know you've worked on some movie pitches as well. The last time I saw you, we were it was right before Christmas, and I was talking about my obsession with Krampus, the Christmas demon, which is just one of my favorite stories in the world. And you told me that you had worked on a movie about Krampus. And I wondered if you wouldn't tell us a little bit about that right now. Because
I want to give you the ending in advance. It's the same ending that you just heard with the NBC show.
Well, it's not the development part. Talk to me about the idea of the movie and, and the plot of the movie.
This is one of my favorite. This is, again, all this stuff I'm talking about, at least in the old days I was wrote with my partner, Josh Weinstein.
Right.
This was one of our favorite things ever. And it was so... It had such a glorious, successful life until, again, it was murdered. It was Ruprecht. You know, the Ruprecht is the other version of Krampus.
Right, right.
Nick Ruprecht.
Are you guys familiar with the story? Yeah, you guys know
you should fill them in on the
Christmas
background.
demons. There are so it's like there's like the anti-Santa in some countries, usually in like the hill parts of Germany. But there's the evil. So if you're good, Santa brings you gifts, and if you're bad, Krampus murders you and takes you to hell.
Or he'll beat you with a stick.
Yeah, or beats you with a stick. Yeah, it varies in different areas. But there's like a lot of places have this like the yang to Santa's yin, and it's just my favorite part of folklore, and that we have decided to do Christmas without a Krampus. We just decide Santa's good enough.
Well, that was pretty much the premise of the movie, was that Ruprecht was the version, and imagine he was like Jack Black, that he and Santa were partners for hundreds of years,
right.
And Santa would always, he would reward the good kids, and Ruprecht would, abuse the bad kids.
Right.
And so, but what happened in our movie was that Ruprecht got left behind, like at the South Pole, or he was frozen for 100 years. And he came back and he's like, what the hell happened here? Like, you get a present no matter how good or bad you were?
Right.
And he couldn't believe it. And
He'd be furious.
it was based on Lennon and McCartney. Like, Lennon, McCartney, like the soft kind of easygoing guy, Santa, who's like, oh, they're children, give them presents. And Lennon was like, and it was all just, he was infuriated by the way Santa had let things slide, and Santa was like, oh, well, it's Christmas time, and Ruprecht couldn't, he finally just, he basically just he knocked Santa out. He took over Christmas and made it like the Christmas, like the vengeful Christmas. And so
I love this idea so much.
It was really funny, and in fact, it was one of those rare things where, like, in Hollywood, there's a script coverage written by the script, by script readers and stuff. This actually got great coverage, and people were like, "Oh my God, this never happens." And then somebody decided, "Oh, you know what? We can take the elements of the story and we can put them into Santa Claus 3," and that is what happened. And then we never received any credit or money for that, and then they did that. So, but these are sad. I don't bumming everybody out with these sad stories of Hollywood. I mean, talk about something fun and nice, Alex, please.
Well, I want to dwell on that for just one more second. Not the sad part of that.
That is standard operating procedure. That and for this type of thing, it's not like unusual in the least.
And the sad thing is that there's like a person in Hollywood, they're like the studio execs who are going to go pay for that script, but there's not the anti-studio exec who's going to beat those people and throw them in a hole for stealing your idea. We need a Hollywood Krampus. So this is a tough spot now where everything I've talked about, you've turned into something that's kind of dark and a bummer for you. So here's what I want to know. What is it, like, what can I ask you that you're not going to fuck up for me? What's great in your life?
You got kids, right? They're going to be okay, probably.
I don't want to imply that this is dark. It's a great deal of fun to do this stuff, and when it comes out, it is fantastic. I'm very excited about Flower Teen Kill Teen.
Well, that's
more of a kind of a niche weirdo thing, but like, it was great to do, super fun. They loved it all the way through. I love the way it came out. So that's the ultimate. That's the happy ending story, and that happens every so often.
Right. So you're also like planting a lot of seeds, which only one of these has to work to like keep you busy for 10 years, right? It's not like this gets picked up and then I go write some more pilots.
It's so much fun, and it's so much more fun, and this is the reason I don't live in LA, than being on the staff of someone's show and working there for 79 hours a week and taking orders from a monster.
Right.
Which is what happens to a lot of TV writers. This is exactly what I wanted to do, and I have made it happen. So there you go.
That is very optimistic and very cool. Ladies and gentlemen,